Hi YouTube, this is Cedric Honstadt. I am an illustrator and cartoonist, and I wanted to spend a few minutes talking about kind of an update of where I'm at with webcomics. I've been doing a webcomic for a little over a year now. Right now it's called Sketchbook Silliness. Eventually I may change the title to something else, but that's what it's been known as so far. What happened, how it started was back in 2015, at the end of the year, well, back in the fall, in Inktober. Inktober, if you're familiar with it, it's in October every year. Artists all over the internet challenge themselves to draw something in ink every single day of the month if you can, or as much as you can, maybe once a week, but however often you can, and post it on the internet with hashtag Inktober, and it's a really big deal, and I decided to try and discipline myself to that. And about halfway through the month I started trying to add some humor to the drawings, and a few of them, there was mixed results, but a few of them people seemed to really like and got shared around a lot, and I thought, this is really fun. Maybe I could turn this into a webcomic. And so without much more forethought or plan than that, I started posting this series that I call Sketchbook Silliness, where roughly once a week on average, I would try and come up with a funny joke and do it as a comic or a cartoon or a silly drawing, and share it on the internet and see what happens. And so I've been doing that for a while, and some of it has been mixed results. I've had a few that were not that funny, honestly, but I've had a few that people seem to really like and were spread. I would say they went mildly viral. They would get 30,000-40,000 views, which is not bad, and that's kind of encouraging. And so as I've gained some following with it, I've gained probably between 5,000 and 10,000 followers that I now have on all my social media combined, which again is not huge, but it's not nothing either. It's been kind of fun to see an audience grow and be really enjoying that, and seeing what I can learn from that. And so this winter, this last fall, I guess it's been about 3 months ago now, maybe, I decided to get on Patreon, because as much as I enjoy doing these comics, and I'm fortunate enough to have an illustration business which pays my bills during the day, where I can do artwork for clients and survive with that, so I get to make a living drawing, which is good. But doing these comics still takes a lot of time. It takes a few hours each week, and that's time that, as good as it feels to have everyone like your stuff and share it, and to watch those like numbers climb and get bigger, you can't buy groceries with likes. And so trying to figure out ways to monetize it. And the real way that a lot of webcomic people seem to be having success is with Patreon. So I launched a Patreon page. I thought, I've got a few thousand people that follow and read my comics, and I'll put it on Patreon, and that should bring in something worthwhile. And so far, I've had a total of 2 backers on Patreon. I've done a successful Kickstarter in the past. I raised about $15,000 for a book a couple years ago, so I know, I like to think I know something about getting a following and raising money. So I was a little discouraged by that, but it's been humbling in a good way, I think. So I thought I'd share some thoughts about where I'm at with the comic and the things I've been learning. One thing that a lot of people that I read a lot about as I've learned about making webcomics, and the ones that are successful at it, which is a small number. I think it's kind of like, maybe an analogy would be actors in Hollywood. In Hollywood, there are thousands and thousands and thousands of actors who are working actors, but the vast majority of them are extras or get very bit parts into things, and they have to work side jobs to pay the bills. And then there is kind of this disproportionate scale where there's the vast majority of the actors make almost no money, relatively speaking, doing acting. And then you have this tiny sliver of actors who are really successful, who become famous and very wealthy. And not that I'm in this to get rich or famous or wealthy at all, but I think there's sort of a parallel in webcomics. There are a few webcomics people who are really successful, and everything they do gets shared, and they've got tons and tons of followers, and everybody's seen their work on Facebook. But that's just a small sliver, and there's a ton of other people doing webcomics who are really struggling to get a following and to figure out a way to make money of it. So, I feel like I fit into that group. But anyway, as I've been researching webcomics, I've been learning one thing I kept seeing over and over was people would say that it takes a long time to find your voice, to build an audience, to see your comic evolve into something. And I've been a professional illustrator for about 20 years, and so I feel like I kind of know how to draw, and I kind of know, who I am. And so I thought, well, I can maybe hopefully cut to the front of the line on that one. But as I've been doing it for about a year, I see that there is a lot of truth to that. It seems like, I definitely think that I've grown, and my work has evolved just in this past year, at least in terms of the webcomic work that I do, in that once you really have to force yourself to sit down and think up ideas, and you spend hours writing it and then drawing it, and then your mind just kind of overthinks and processes as you're working up each idea, and as you're sketching everything out, you think, is this funny, is this not funny, how can I make this funnier? And as you're trying to think up the jokes, what should I say, what do I really want to say, do I want to get political or not? Probably not. Do I want this to be do I like more of the stupid humor or the puns, or do I like more clever jokes? Do I want something that's going to be a lot of panels, or that takes a build up to the joke, or do I just want to try and fit it in all into one panel? And fitting it into one panel is easier to draw, but a lot of times those are harder to write because you don't, because you have to boil everything down into one quick punch, which can be harder to do than to write a longer joke. There's that old expression, I didn't have time to write you a short letter, so I wrote you a long one. And that's kind of true. There's editing. When you have to edit things down, it takes more time, it takes more work to get something that looks simpler and smaller. And that's very true with webcomics. So anyway, all these things that you're wrestling with, and do I want to have characters or not? And maybe I don't want to do silly jokes. Maybe I want to do stuff that is more narrative, that talks about real life, or things that are emotional themes that everybody can connect with. And start looking at other webcomics and studying the successful ones and seeing, what do they do? Do they do ha-ha jokes, or do they do like, oh, that's really true, isn't that interesting kind of things? Or or they do jokes about family life and parenting. What's their theme? What are they about? And that's a process as an artist I've had to work through, and I feel like I'm still working through it. Part of me feels like I want to get more, do more religious things with my cartoons, that maybe, but try and be in a real clever way that connects with people, and that's of course really challenging. But I've been thinking maybe steering things that way a little bit, but I just don't know. But I see what they're saying now when they say it takes a while to build your webcomic and to build a following, because to find that voice and to experiment with things and to figure out what works and what doesn't, it really is a long process. I do feel like I think my comics are getting better. I think they're getting a little punchier, a little stronger in terms of the joke writing. Although I still feel like I have a couple duds now and then, but in some ways I feel like I've taken a step back. Like I feel like when I was early on, I was just writing or drawing whatever funny thing would pop into my head, and as I tried to get more disciplined about it and studying humor and thinking through what's funny and what's not funny and what voice do I want to have and what do I want to say. I feel like I'm kind of going through a process where, for a while, my jokes got worse because as I was maybe overthinking it, but also just experimenting and trying different things and kind of failing. And now I'm starting to kind of gain some strength again as I've got more knowledge in my tool belt, and I'm learning how to use those tools. It's getting better. So anyway, this is turning into a long video, but I'll try and keep this concise. Despite the struggle, despite the challenges, despite the fact I'm not making much money at it, there are some things that are of value to me doing this. I feel like it's been good for me. First is that it's forced me to have the discipline of keeping a regular schedule of putting out at least one comic every week, even if I don't think it's necessarily a good one or a strong one. Just having that discipline of having to put something out there and having people expecting it and waiting for it is really it really feels good. It feels good to have something in my life that is structured like that I'm continually committed to doing no matter what. Trying to find a manageable level. I couldn't do one every day. That's not manageable. I tried doing a couple a week, and that even turned out to be too much. But I found kind of what I know I can at least for sure do. And just like they tell every artist, you got to keep a sketchbook, you got to keep practicing, you got to keep drawing. It's kind of like an NFL player has to still go to the gym and work out. He doesn't just get out in the field and that's all he does. You still have to do practice and exercise. And doing my own webcomic this way has really been has been great exercise for me. It's been good discipline. It's also been really fun to experiment because this is, I purposefully just kind of made what I'm doing kind of open-ended. I don't have set characters. It's not a set format of always 3 panels or 1 panel or whatever. It's kind of whatever I want to feel like doing. That has really allowed me to experiment a lot. So I feel like when I'm doing client work, I'm kind of locked in to doing what the client wants or the client expects. But with this comic, I can draw any style I want. I can try pushing shapes, or I can try making something more realistic. I can try experimenting with different brushes. There's a guy named Kyle Webster who does some really great brushes for Photoshop that you can purchase pretty cheaply online. I highly recommend looking him up and getting it. I'll try and put the link down in the description. But just experimenting with my visual style. I've admitted I could push it a lot harder than I do, but sometimes I outline things, sometimes I don't outline things. Even just simply playing around with different fonts. I mean, there's all kinds of different fun things that I get to experiment with. Doing things in one color versus doing things in full color. Doing things, maybe this time I'm going to do a comic and I'm going to focus on the value instead of the color while I'm finishing it. So there's just it's been really freeing and really fun to try that. I feel like I'm finding my own style. Even though I've been illustrating for 20 years, I still feel like I've never really found my style exactly. And I feel like that's maybe starting to come a little more clear and a little more into shape as I play around with this. So there's some benefit in that. It's forced me to broaden myself creatively. I feel like as I've had to sit down and think up jokes, the writing really is the most important part of doing a successful webcomic. I think I've seen a lot of, there's an old expression that, good writing can save bad art, but it doesn't work the other way around. Good art cannot save bad writing. So you can have a joke like Gary Larson, The Far Side, the old comics, was not that, he couldn't really draw that good. He was not an excellent artist by any stretch, but his humor was always just hilarious. And if the joke is really funny, the art doesn't have to be perfect. But if the art can be beautiful and wonderful. You can have, Bill Watterson level watercolor painting cartoons art that's amazing. But if the jokes are lame or don't make sense or doesn't connect with people, then it doesn't matter. People aren't going to like it and share it. So the writing really is the most important part. And that's something I feel like as I'm learning and as I'm growing as an artist and I'm reading about joke writing and learning about that and thinking more about that, it's forced me to realize that in order to come up with good jokes, I have to broaden myself. I can't just be in my studio all the time. I have to get out and be with people. I have to go out and read books and watch documentaries and learn things, and which that's just normal healthy stuff we should all be doing anyway. But thinking about material for my comic is forcing me to just be more alert and paying more attention to what's going on around me, and trying to feed my brain with new things and with new ideas and new experiences. And just life's getting a little richer for me that way, because I have to look for things that could be, you never know when something's gonna click in your brain, or something's gonna spark a new idea. Or sometimes I've even just had my kids say something silly that makes me that leads my thinking down a path towards a joke. So you just never know. But it forced me to live life a little better and to get out there and do more. And it's also forced me to, well, anyway, I don't know, my brain just fried on me for a second. Well, the other thing I was going to say, though, was it's also even helped me a little bit with my promotion. As a freelancer, you're always trying to look for more projects and more people to hire you. And I'm still trying to look for new clients, which I always am. For 20 years, I've been doing that. But with some of the clients I have, every once in a while, maybe once a month or once every couple months, I'll just send a few of them a little note to keep in touch, and I'll throw in one of these cartoons I've been doing in an email. And sometimes that can help kind of brighten their day a little bit, and it hopefully helps me stand out a little bit in their memory, because aside from just the regular, hopefully good work that I've been doing for them, it also gives them something something extra in their inbox besides just the traditional, hi, I'm just checking in to see if you have a project kind of email. Let you know I've got some opening in my schedule. Have you got anything? Makes it more fun. So it kind of helped me in my promotion, in my self promotion, to be able to throw in some jokes and some cartoons. I think people enjoy that. So anyway, those are some of the reasons why I keep doing it. I really do enjoy it. I feel like it's a ton of fun. It really energizes me creatively. So I think I'm going to keep doing it at least for a while. Hopefully I can find a way to monetize it at some point. But that is the cold reality of webcomics, is that it's a lot of fun for the artist, but it's a real challenge to make it into something that's financially viable. So you have to do it because you love it. And I know that sounds cliche, but I think it really is true. But I do love it. I'm still trying to figure out where I'm going to go with it exactly, but that's where I'm at. So I know I kind of rambled. Thanks for the watching, and you can check out my cartoons at sketchbooksilliness.com, and my regular website is cedricstudio.com, CEDRIC studio.com, and I'll put all that in the description. Thanks for watching. You have a great day.